So, hey, how's it going?
Hey, Alan, how's it going?
Okay,
I know.
we're recording. Need more practice at this, right?
Yeah, I know. It needs to start recording automatically. I should turn that on so it starts
Yeah,
recording from the beginning and we don't have to worry about it. And so it captures
exactly.
it captures everything from the beginning.
So yeah, last time you were having issues with this actual auto recording, right? Oh, my recordings at least, anyway.
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't been able to spend any time working on the product itself, because I've been working on,
Ah,
you know,
doing the actual other
other
stuff.
stuff. Yeah. So actually, that's one of the things I want to talk to you about today. So yeah, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is this idea that I have to force myself to spend more time working on marketing, related
Hmm.
items. So
Yes.
so I'm thinking about splitting my time somehow in half the time working on the product itself and half the time
Hmm.
working on marketing related stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I know the feeling well.
yeah.
It's really difficult to balance these, right? Because it's you think, well, I can't get my marketing stuff done until I've sorted this for the product because then it's not right or it's changing.
Yeah.
And then when you spend too much time on the marketing side, you're like, oh my god, the product hasn't changed in 2 weeks. So you feel like, yeah, it's a tricky balance to get right
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure that'll change over time as well. I mean, I think at least for the stuff like landing page and stuff, or at least the basic marketing material, yeah, once you've hit a certain point, you'll be like, okay, I can step away from that. And I guess bouncing between the two rather than trying to split your week half and half is going to be probably more keep your sanity in the long run, right?
Yes, yes, and that's the tricky part. So considering that, at least for myself, I don't do well with, and probably most people don't do well with context switching, right? So
Not at all.
it's a real productivity killer to
Hmm.
be switching context all the time. So I'm more productive when I can focus large blocks of time, working on something. So even if it's a coding session, right? I do better if I have at least a couple of hours to dedicate to
Right.
coding, as
Yeah.
opposed to just an hour or half an hour here and there. I can't really get anywhere with that.
So hard to, yeah, you can't get anywhere in that amount of time. I mean, this is what makes it so hard, this idea of trying to do client work or do other work, working on multiple projects and things. It's great in theory. It's really hard to do in real life. I think the only sane way to do it is to make sure that you can block out certain amounts of your time to say, okay, I am going to be spending 3 hours tomorrow evening to work on a thing, and not trying to think, well, I'll just squeeze this in at the end of doing this.
Yeah.
It's just like it's no good for your productivity. Sucks, and also I think it just makes you feel more anxious about it as well, because you feel everything's like piling up rather than being able to think, I made significant progress on this, right? You
Yeah.
feel that you're just constantly fighting things as opposed to getting somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And so taking that into account, I've been thinking about maybe splitting my time in a way that is like maybe a week, a
Mm.
whole week I dedicate
Yeah.
to coding, dedicated to the product itself.
Yeah.
And then another week dedicated to marketing related
Mm.
stuff. And so go back and forth between that, a week coding, a week marketing.
As I say, you'll probably find a certain changes happen at certain times of the product as well, right? You'll hit a point where it's like, okay, I need to spend the next 2 or 3 weeks focusing on development because marketing's looking after itself for now, and I can
Mhm.
shift focus. But yeah, I think something like that makes sense.
Yeah, because part of the marketing is also, social media
Mm.
posts and stuff like
Right.
that can be sort of automated. If I spend, let's say, a week creating, not the entire time doing that, but
Mm.
as part of that week of work on marketing, I could create some posts or some Twitter posts that I can schedule and
Right.
stack them up. And so the following week when I'm working on coding, then those can be
Stuff's still active, even though you're not actively doing it,
yeah,
right?
exactly. So it's like dripping those.
Not just disappeared off the face of the planet for a few weeks, right? Just
Yeah.
because you're coding.
Yeah, yeah. So something like that. Find ways to automate and still be doing something in that front while focusing on coding and focusing on the product.
And of course, then you've got the point when we actually start having more customers who are going to start having more support requests, then
Yeah.
that's another constant which is going to be in the mix always. I mean, that's not something you can put off for a week, right?
Yes, exactly.
So I think leaving space in the future, brain schedule for that as well that's important too.
Yeah. So yeah, regardless of whether I'm working on the product itself or the other things that I need to work on, I would have to be focusing on support for sure.
Yeah. So far, you've with the users that you've got, how's the support been? As in, how many support requests have you been getting? Is it like a few occasionally?
So far, I haven't gotten any support requests. I only got one for backup recordings that they needed
Oh
to
yeah,
get
right.
because
You're right, because it's manual at the moment, isn't it? You have to request them from
yeah,
you,
they have to
right?
request them
Yeah.
from me, and then so I can retrieve them and send them to them. So I got one of those requests early on because there was an issue, but that's been fixed. So I haven't gotten any more requests like
Okay.
that.
And that's something you can, at least to a point, automate in the future as well, right? So
Yeah.
that's something that you can just tackle when it becomes something that will take up a significant part of your time. It's like, okay, now it's time to automate it, right?
Yeah.
Rather than wasting time up front.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And then I got another, wasn't really a support request, but more feedback, or just something that happened with the app. They submitted a message, just indicating what had happened, kind of a little glitch, something I need to look into. So it kind of is a support request, but it's not. It was like a one-off kind of thing.
It's a one-off, right? Yeah. Exactly. It's not the type of thing. So this is something that, again, I've only got this handful of like beta users at the moment, and this actually comes into something I was going to mention today as well. Is the expectations of my Japanese users are quite different from the expectations, or at least the patterns I'm seeing from our first few Japanese users.
Yeah.
Japanese users versus non-Japanese users is quite different, and there's definitely this aspect of like, tell me what to do versus let me figure it out for myself. So I'm kind of seeing this repeatedly, is rather than, for instance, some of my beta users in the UK, like, just give me a login, let me poke around, let me work it out. And the difference here with the users are like, walk me through it, show me how to use it, show me not just how to use it, but how I should be using it. And that's something that's, I guess it's a change of mindset that I think I've got to make. Is I think for the longest time, and I think all of the products I've built myself as opposed to for clients or part of another company, is I like this idea of, I guess, something like the original Delicious or Flickr or the old school web applications, where they were like, we built a thing, it does things, there's features, there's things like tags and things, and you figure it out. Yeah. It's that there isn't a prescribed way of doing it. It's just, it does things. And then over time, people will find patterns. There's a lot of human hacking of making it work the way they want it to. And I guess my product design tendency is to think of things like that as well, is to think things in that way. It's like, okay, if I add this feature, then it could be used in these 5 different ways, and I'll let people figure it out and work out what works best for them. And I think that's a difference of most web applications that I'm finding today, which are now, as I'm kind of more aware of this, and I'm looking a little bit more critical about their onboarding and the way the interfaces are just constructed, and the way they're designed, and the copy they use, and say the onboarding particularly, they're like, do this, use this like this, and that's it. And that's really difficult for, I guess, for me internally to feel like I have the confidence to do that, right? Yeah. I mean, I have in my mind an ideal usage pattern of how the application is used best, both from experience and from designing it in a particular way. But I've been very, very hesitant about telling people to use it like that, just because I'm like, well, who am I to tell you how to run your business? It's like, I can advise, but I don't feel that, I'm not going to storm in there and say, okay, you need to do this and you need to do that and don't do that. So the product is almost like a light touch, it almost probably too light to touch in telling you what to do or how to use it. And I'm now rethinking that just because everybody I've spoke to is using it in a different way. All of the beta users tend to be using it differently, and that's fine. That's good. But at the same time, they're also like, am I doing it wrong? And I'm like, there is no wrong. And they're like, but that you're using it differently. And I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just that's what fits with your business. And that's causing anxiety for my users, because they feel like, oh, I feel that I'm doing it wrong. I don't know what you want me to do here, so I'm not going to do anything because I don't know what I should be doing. And I'm like, okay, that's thrown me a little bit.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I'm trying to address it in both my marketing, onboarding, my marketing materials, just so it sets the tone for why you should be using this, not just what it does, but this is the problem you have. I guess this is a marketing and product design thing to consider, right? From a marketing aspect, the almost like recommended, the known, this is how we should do it, is stating the problem that somebody has and how this application will help make your life better by doing these things, rather than just saying it does this, have at it. So I'm trying to rethink the pitch as to make it clearer as to not just what the problem is, it does that already, but how our product will solve it, in what specific way. It's like, by doing this, you will have this outcome. Be much more clear about what I expect you to do if you use this product. I think that'll set the expectations going in a little more, but then as part of the onboarding, basically have a stronger hand with telling people what to do next. Like, you should do this at this time, and this is when you'll do it next. So be much more opinionated in how I expect people to use it. And it makes me nervous. It makes me makes me feel anxious, because I'm like, but what if they don't want to do it like this?
Yeah. That's interesting. It makes me wonder how other products handle that, and how the Japanese culture deals with other software. Because, a couple of products come to mind, like Notion, for example,
right,
where you can do so much, and it's so,
they're the classic do everything, right? Like, at least of the modern world.
You can do everything and anything in different ways, however you want. It's designed for you to do it however works best for you.
I think what they do well is they address very specific use cases within that, though. So, I mean, they have like a ton of different landing pages depending on where you're coming from. So, if they do a promoted tweet for, project managers, you end up at a landing page that talks to project managers and says, this is what Notion does, and these are the things you can do with it. And I think I've used another few. I've been trying around lots of different products like this, and almost this like template idea of, you're coming in, what's your primary role, and then it tweaks the onboarding to make it work for you. So it suggests use cases, it suggests templates. It almost is like a private, onboarding service for your job. So they have tons of use case examples of, if you're a product designer, this is the templates you might work for you. If you're a developer, then these are the ways you can use this, both in the images they use, the language they use. It's quite intimidating when you think about, oh my god, can I do this?
And they have the resources to do that.
Have the resources to do it.
And as an indie maker, it's not possible to compete at that level. So you have to figure out another way that you can do it, at a scale that works for you, or that works for us, because I may come across the same problem too.
Well, I mean, it's almost like, fusioncast as well, to the point where it works great as a 2-person, 3-person podcast. If you then think of people like in a business context, well, I want to do a weekly business, manager podcast. It's just me using it. Well, I don't have guests there. All of your UI is designed for having more than one people scheduling a meeting, doing a recording, and then posting it to something else. It's very designed around this aspect of like having a guest on your podcast, right?
Yeah.
So you've already kind of decided it's not a niche, but that's your focus, right? That's your audience. And I guess that this is part of the again, the recommended practices of doing an indie product, right, is picking a very targeted audience and talking directly to them. And it's, it's this thing, well, who's your audience? Oh, everybody. And that's just impossible to cope with, right? So I think I guess I have to just be more targeted with that, right? Be much more conscious of who I'm speaking to, at least at this stage. It's like, look at my list of people that are already on my waiting list, that are already beta using the app, and find that common trait between them, or at least the majority bucket that I can put them in. And then start to talk towards that, right? I mean, I've already made the conscious decision of, looking at smaller companies. So avoiding the big megacorps,
enterprise,
even though right, exactly, even though as I said, like the bank advisor, a lot of the people I've spoken to in Japan are like, don't talk to small businesses, they've got no time for this. Talk to bigger corporations who will have got time and money to try things out. But I can't do that. At least not at this stage. I don't have the resources to be able to cope with talking to Toyota, right? That's going to take a little bit of my time to do that, right? So I think, looking at the smaller, 10 to 15 person companies makes much more sense at this stage for me. So I guess optimizing my copy, the way, just the entire experience, optimizing for that is something I need to do a little bit more of, I guess, or a lot more of. But I mean, you mentioned Japanese companies versus others as well. I mean, this is a problem, not a problem, it's a difference between just generally software and how it's used here, or at least not how it's used, but how people use it and how they see it as fitting into their job. And it is very much this idea of these are the tasks, these are the instructions for doing this. Do that, and that's it. And also, I mean, Japan has a much stronger history of being mobile first as well. So especially with desktop software, I mean, I grew up with a computer since the age of like 7 or 8. Okay, there were 8-bit things that didn't do anything, but we've always had computers in my house. Everybody I know, all of my friends always had computers in their house. And that's not a common thing. That isn't a historically strong thing in Japan. People didn't have a home computer out. Of course, that's very generalizing. There's obviously a home computer market, but it wasn't as widely commoditized in the way it was, at least in the UK, and I think in the US as well. So there seems to be a little bit more hesitancy about trying things in software. As in, you open a new application, you just click on everything, right? It's like, what's this do? What does this do? There's no fear about breaking it. There's more curiosity about where's its limits. What can I do with this? How can I use this for what I want? Whereas here it feels like, again, I'm speaking very generally and only from the beta users that I've been talking with, having used it and watching them and talking to them, is like, what do I press? And it's like, well, what do you think you should press? And they're like, tell me where to press. How do I use this? Which button do I click on? It feels a lot more like, tell me how to use this tool, as opposed to give me a hammer and I'll make it work. So that needs to be part of my onboarding experience. And
I think we've talked about in the past, we talked about the use of video, that I think you wanted to implement more video and integrate it into the app itself, so it serves as on the spot kind of help for users.
Right.
So,
you know what's really funny about this? It's like, so on my new check-in page, I think it's called Your Plans at the moment, which I'm in the process of changing. I'll mention that as well. There's not a quarter of the screen, but it's a big chunk of the bottom right-hand corner of the screen is like a video box saying, basically, play here for an intro, right? I've spoken to 2 people who didn't see it. Wow. It's on their screen, but I think we've got so blind to pop-ups and sidebars and boxes and inline things. It's like they literally blanked that out. I'm like, there was 2 people and they were using the same company, and they're like, he's like, well, I didn't know what to do here. And the other lady's like, there's a big video on the screen. Did you watch that? And it's like, what video? And it's the big box with the play button on it. And he's like,
Oh, wow.
oh, I never noticed that. And I'm like, whoa, hold on.
It's like that video of the gorilla in the middle of the room and no one sees
right,
it.
exactly. Completely. I was like, hold on, what?
Wow, interesting.
So I think this idea of like doing like a modal based welcome is I need to do that.
Yeah, blast it on their faces.
Big full screen, like watch this or skip it, right? As opposed to like, I was like, well, if I just put it there on the screen, they can hide it and it's done. But if they want to play it, and they're like, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be a modal that auto opens and auto plays the video, so they don't have to click on anything.
Exactly.
Yeah, those are all interesting challenges that we have to figure out.
Yes, and this as a side to that as well, I'm just realizing the language of some of my things like plans and check-ins. Again, I know what they mean. That doesn't mean my users do, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to consistencyfy my language, make more consistent the language throughout my application. So I'm trying to I'm almost removing this. I use plans a lot, and that throws people just because everyone's like, what's a plan? And it's like, well, it's the plan. A check-in has lots of plans. And they're like, I thought a check-in was a plan. And I'm like, no. So it's, I'm rewording that. And I'm also changing the new check-in page. I'm not going to use it. So it's not my plans anymore. It's the create new check-in page. To right now, it opens multiple form fields because the expectation is it's like, well, you enter your plans in there. And that is throwing people because I use the word save as well next to each form field. And the idea is, again, different people have different experiences, but a save button saves a page, doesn't save a thing on a page, right? So I'm changing that to add. And they won't auto open. You click on add new planned. I forget, they trying different text, but add new plan. Click on that and it opens a form field to add it, hit return. So rather than popping up too many form fields, because again, people think of a web form as being still a thing that gets submitted as a page rather than being an inline thing. And I think that's also maybe a downside of using more traditional form looking elements rather than a more custom. If you use an SPA SaaS product, they don't tend to style things in a traditional web way, as in it doesn't have with slight border shadow, an inline form field. It'll have something that looks more application-y as a form field, and people disassociate that from being a web. Again, it depends on the user's experience, but someone who's coming from, knowing what a web application is and its limits, they assume that it's like, well, if I click save, that's going to save the page. And it's like, no, it's just adding that item, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, it looks like a form. Oh, it is, but So, this is me learning UX in real time.
I can see that. And it makes me think about my UI for adding guests to a schedule session, where there's just an add button that adds a new row to add a new guest.
Yes.
And there's just one save button that saves the whole thing.
And it's like, by adding that, does that save it, or do I need to click save after adding it? Right?
Yeah.
And this is where the copy I need to use on the page is much more clear about, or it's much more obvious what's happening, not like doesn't leave any ambiguity, because again, there's the main. It's been interesting. I've had some very good direct feedback about like, I don't understand this. This isn't clear to me. What does that button do? And it's like, okay, this is what I need. And these aren't like edge cases. These are like, core users who I expect to be selling to, so this is really helping just make that experience much better. So it's been super. But you can see me learning how to do user interface design in real time.
It's unbelievable how difficult it is to address all these different aspects and make it clear for everyone, because everyone has a different background and a different perspective, and they see things differently, and it's really hard. It's that's why it's
It
a
is.
field of its own, user
Well,
experience, user
and
interface.
that's why there's usually a team working on the
Yeah.
product, right? As well.
And we're just one person doing it all.
Yes.
So it is challenging, but
But I mean,
you'll
it's
get there.
super. I mean, the massive benefit of this is, just the it's how I learn best, right? Is by doing it and finding and failing, right?
Yep.
It's like,
Yep.
it's like I won't make that mistake again. It's just every bit of learning just makes your next time you do it better. And it's funny now. I think I tweeted this the other day. I been working on this rework of the new check-in page, and because that's what I'm using in development here, and so I'm used to seeing that now. It's constantly being tweaked. It's just looking better day by day. And then I opened production with the client, and I'm like, oh my god, what's that? It's like it looks so like old now. I guess that because I'm used to it looking so much better.
Yeah.
Seeing what the production users are using, it's like, oh wow, okay. I need to get this done.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, that looked fine to me, right?
Yeah.
It's just this, like it is a massive learning.
Yeah, that's
experience.
the way it is. That's the way it is. You have something, and you come back later and look at it, and it's like, oh yeah, it's not the most ideal maybe, and then you've gotten feedback, and you see things differently.
Speaking of that, yeah, I saw your new landing page for fusioncast as
Oh,
well.
thank you. Yeah, you saw it.
It's very nice. Yeah, no, it looks nice. It's cool.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know how I feel about it yet. I didn't want to go the route of creating something that's, that looks just like everything else out there. I wanted to do something unique and different, and that's why I had created something totally different before with that landing page that was inspired by the 1950s, radio era.
Which looks awesome. It really does.
Thank you.
But I understand your need to do something a little bit more traditional, right?
Yeah. It was hard to carry that design. Yeah. It was hard to carry that design through all the way. It was great for just that one page, but to do it all like that, and maybe maybe I can pull it off later on, or hire a designer to help me out to create that brand and create that look and feel. But I think, being honest with myself, I think I hit a limit there, with my creativity. My design skills are not that advanced. So I'm like, I'm just gonna stop there. And I can't, I can't spend the time, doing that. It takes me a lot longer because it's not my core strength. And so I decided to kill that design and go with something a little more traditional, keep it really simple, and not spend too much time,
Yeah. It's you can focus on the actual content much easier with this right now.
Yeah.
I noticed even though the other one looked wicked, you almost skim the text because it's design heavy as opposed to content heavy, right? Whereas this is just content.
Yeah.
I mean, I say simply styled, but it looks good.
Yeah.
But it's all about the content. Everything the content is, what it says, the features it does are front and center. There's no distractions, right? So I think in that way that can probably help you, get that correct, because you'll focus on that rather than making it look fancy, right?
Yeah. And I already got some feedback from some folks, and it's good feedback. So I'm going to go back and, revisit certain things. Plus, there's a ton of stuff that is not there that I'm planning to do. I just wanted to get something simple out there and just, half decent, good to go, so that I can get back to focusing on the product. Because as of now, I haven't been working on the product itself for about 3 weeks now. And so I really need to get back to that, because I've been focusing on the website, and I just wanted to create a strong foundation. So it's built on Statamic 3 and Tailwind CSS. And so I wanted to have the blog component. I wanted to have way to edit and make changes easily for myself. And
that's the worst thing is, so I'm using, it wasn't intended to be a long-term thing, but I'm using UMSO, which used to be called Landon, which is basically a launch page tool. it's basically a website editor, plus it's got like email lists and blogs and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's like $30 a month, and you get like 3 sites for it. So as a pre-creation thing, it was like, okay, put waiting list type thing. It can integrate with MailChimp and all the rest. So I use that as a placeholder, but it's become more than that, because my wife's been working on the Japanese site, so she's been adding like guides for these beta users how to use things, because we feel that we need that like a bit more tutorial level led things. And so just being able to say, okay, go on, work on the site, and it looks good. It makes a huge difference not having to mess with your tools all the time, right? So yeah, I can appreciate that. At least you've got a thing that works, and you can edit, and you don't have to fiddle with it, right?
Yeah. And it's Statamic 3 is awesome. I really like
Is
it.
it good?
I
cool.
love Statamic. It's built for developers, really. So it's super flexible. You can do a lot of things with it, and you can customize it to behave and work the way you want it, the way it works best for you. So I wanted that foundation, and so I kept the design super simple. I still need to drop a video on top of the homepage. I'm going to record a quick demo. Just haven't had time to record it the way I want it. I wanted to get a good camera to capture really nice,
it's a good excuse anyway, right?
HD video. And actually, I just got it today in the mail.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
What did you get?
It's a Logitech Brio. It's a
cool.
4K HD camera. It's really good. It's supposed to be good. So I just got it in the mail today, so I haven't really tried it yet, but I haven't even opened the box yet. But I want to record this video and then put it on the homepage, and a ton of other stuff that I have in mind to add to the website, but it'll be little by little. And so for now, it's just simple.
But so it can be incremental improvements now. It's not like you've got the baseline down, and you can now start to focus on improving the content, right?
Yep.
Very nice. I've never used Statamic because I don't have any experience like Laravel or any like modern PHP. My first web app was PHP, but that was a long time
ago. The old days of obscure, crazy PHP.
It was like, it's like the Levels AO. All of my applications were pretty much one PHP file, and it worked.
Right?
It was adventurous when you had a second PHP file for.
I remember those days. That's when I started. That's the way it was, and it was all procedural, no object oriented.
I don't think it even existed in PHP back then. There was no object.
So no, modern PHP development has come a long way.
I've heard so many good things about
Laravel
especially, and and Statamic as well. I mean, I love their documentation and homepage, and it's just like they really get that like spot on, right? It's like I don't even know anything about the product, but I want to use this. This is cool.
Jack McDade, he was one of the co-founders. He's super talented designer, and he has a really good way of designing, and also has a good sense of humor. So you can see that all throughout in the documentation and everything he creates. There's a sense of humor applied to everything, and I met him in person 2019 for the Laravel conference, Laracon in New York. And so I met him.
We had conferences in person, huh?
It's right before the pandemic.
It's good old days.
Right before the pandemic is it's the last one that happened. The 2020 got canceled, of course. So I met him in person. Really cool guy. Yeah,
nice.
And so that's what's going on with the website.
Do you have plans for, because your email list is probably reasonably large now? Or at least it's not insignificant.
It's not that large, and that's one of the reasons that I need to focus on marketing, and I'm planning to do this split schedule kind of thing, because I need to focus more on that. I haven't been promoting it as much as I should have, so my mailing list is not that large. So that's one of the reasons I wanted this website to be kind of like the way it is now, so that I can feel more confident about pointing people there and promoting the
I guess
product.
Part of this, I'm not going to say rebrand, but change to a more simpler style makes it easier to maintain consistency going forward, right? As well. I think if your other landing page look great, but that also is like, you kind of almost have to commit to that, right? Full time. So not just the landing page, but you almost need to start about, how does your application fit with that? How do your emails, your welcome mails, you want to try to make look within that same kind of branding, right? So that's a big commitment, right?
Yeah, and it's too much for me. So
at least at this stage, yeah, for sure.
I've been trying to think more in terms of what works best for me as an indie maker, solo founder. I have to
It needs to just be realistic, right?
Yeah, exactly. Be realistic with myself. What are my limitations, and what can I do with the resources that I have? I can't be designing this extravagant website and spending all that time. I can't do that. So
No.
just keep it simple. Later on, there'll be time, the right time will come later.
Yeah.
Hopefully, once I have more resources, then I can hire a designer, and then, it'll be a lot easier to do that kind of stuff. So for now, simplicity, minimalism is what works.
But it just means it's sustainable and maintainable, and right.
Yeah.
You're not just going to spend all your time tweaking emails because they need to look right.
Yeah.
Very sensible.
So that's about it. I think
this is why all my interfaces are like blue. Blue or purple. It's like, well, I can't choose a wrong color there. Everything's just shades of blue, right? Or tailwind indigo, pretty much.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. How bad can I make it look?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's about it on my end. The only other thing is now we've successfully launched our podcast, at least with the trailer.
Yeah,
just the trailer. Well, folks listening to this later on will be kind of all news by then, but right. It is new to us now.
Thank you for good work.
I was able to put that together and publish it, so it's out there now.
Yeah. I think picked up by everything apart from Google Podcast, maybe, right?
Yeah, I think it already picked it up.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I haven't checked, but it's a good thing that we have that now, so that when the first actual episode is published, it goes straight through. It doesn't. We don't have to wait for.
Right, because otherwise you'd be like, it's a new episode, but you can't listen to it because it's not on Apple yet. So at least now everything's set up and it'll just kind of flow through, right?
Yeah, and I've been doing editing on the episodes that we recorded, and that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, actually. So I think that's the last thing on my end. It's the recording, editing. I think there needs to be some editing done in all the sessions that we recorded. My goal, or I was hoping that we wouldn't have to do a lot of editing, but because it takes so long. But at some point we'll have to figure out if there's a way we can outsource the editing, or we get better at recording so that we don't have to edit anything.
I was just about to say, I hopefully you'll find that the later ones require less editing, right?
Yeah.
I think we're getting a little bit better about being aware of what we're doing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And in the spirit of transparency, I wanted to talk about this and let it be part of the podcast and for others to listen, because it could be
it's educational,
an educational thing. Yeah, exactly. So one thing that I've noticed as I'm doing editing is that we tend to talk over each other sometimes, and so when that happens, it sounds really bad in the podcast. So I'm having to edit things out and kind of like choose which one of us is saying the main thing, so that way that stays. And then if the other one was trying to say something and then it stops, then that gets cut out. So going through that, and so that's something that we can improve. Try not to talk over each other. And the other thing is, I've noticed with myself that I speak very slowly. I'm like, oh man, like I sound super slow, like, because I guess I tend to find the right words, before I speak, and I kind of like maybe overthink what I'm saying, and I don't want to say the wrong thing, so I kind of take pauses, and especially the first, and maybe you're right, maybe it's part of it is that it's the first episodes where we don't know what we're doing, we don't know
what we're doing at all, right?
We don't have that much experience, so I found myself pausing a lot, and so I'm trying to edit that out, and hopefully as we progress we get better and more comfortable with talking. And
have you tried using Descript?
No, I haven't. I know they have a lot of crazy features for editing and stuff.
The biggest thing, so when I did just a short video for the presentation I did at Dot Plan, just being able to edit the audio as if it was text, just being looking at it and thinking that paragraph, I can delete that and just hitting delete. Or that word, delete that.
Yeah.
It's like so useful. To do that in an audio editor would have just been a nightmare. So yeah, that might speed things up a little bit. Obviously, we've got latency against us as well, which doesn't help. But so it's funny you mentioned like speaking speed, because yeah, when I listen to the trailer, like I speak a lot quicker than Mario.
Yeah.
I'm like, bah, 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 bah. And you're like, bah, bah, bah. I'm like, oh, okay. Either we need to meet somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, one of the things they say is that when I've heard this in the context of conference speaking, for example, right? When you're speaking to an audience, one of the things that happens is if you're nervous, you speak faster because you're nervous, so you speak a lot
I'm
faster,
always nervous.
kind of thing. Or, and so they always say, speak slower than what you normally do or what you think you should be speaking,
Almost to the point where it feels uncomfortable. So when I've done public speaking like 3 or 4 times now at reasonably large conferences.
Yeah.
I remember the one I enjoyed the most, I got to the point where I felt completely wrong to be speaking this slowly. But it was also the one which people responded to the best. People came up to me afterwards and said it was really good. I'm like, did I not like sound weird? I was like, no, just to the point where it feels like to myself I'm walking through mud or something. I guess that's just the change from my usual speaking pattern.
Yeah.
To me, it felt like really, but it seemed to work. So yeah, I guess that's just my, my problem.
So for me, it's the opposite. I need to speed up a little. You need to slow down a little. We'll meet in the middle somewhere.
Although it's funny because I listen to podcasts with Overcast, you're probably the same, right? And I use their smart speed plus listen to things at about 1.3, 1.4 times anyway.
Yeah, I do the same.
Right. So I think one of the most weirdest things for me is John Gruber on, Daring Fireball guy. If listening to his podcasts on normal speed by accident, because I think I played it on the web sometime rather than listening to it in Overcast, and I'm like, is he okay? It sounds like something's wrong.
It sounds so slow.
Yeah, I was like, some problem. I'm like, oh no, it's just I'm used to listening to everything on like so sped up.
Oh yeah, I totally experienced the same thing. Totally. Yeah, I've done that before, and it's like, oh, yeah. Even the music of some podcasts, like if I listen to it in the sped up, way that I normally do,
that becomes normal, right?
That becomes normal. It sounds great, and then I listen to it in the normal speed, and it's like, oh, it's so slow. Like it sounds horrible.
Yep.
Yeah, it's weird.
But so I think if we just try to be a little bit more conscious of, again, this is probably me versus you, of waiting till everything's finished before, making my point. It's like, try to hold back, Alan.
Yeah,
get
but
too excited.
It's not just you. It's me too. It's not just you. It's both of us. But it comes with practice, right? With experience, we'll get better at that. It's our first recording, so we're still learning this thing.
And need to put a disclaimer at the beginning to say we're still figuring this out.
Yeah, right.
But I think even just as we're speaking now, even for the last few episodes we recorded, they do seem a little bit more structured and paced, maybe. So hopefully that's something we can keep improving on. So hopefully people will bear with us long enough that he quits on the first episode. What the hell is this rubbish?
We can only hope, right? So
although I guess it's just one of those things of just compounding experience and quality over time, right? You're not going to get things right on the first pass. So just keep working.
Yep. Let's just keep at it. Practice makes perfect. So
indeed,
we'll keep chipping away at it. Yeah, I think that's it on my end. So anything else you want to share?
One nice thing was I got approved for paddle payments. Yeah, so they were, when I first spoke to them a few months back, they're like, come back when you're finished. I'm like, okay. Yeah, that's nice. We're for products who have actually finished building. I'm like, oh, okay, thanks. So it was a slight burn, but so I mailed them the other day. I'm like, so I'm ready now because it's going to take time to integrate that anyway, and I don't want to be at the point where I'm like, okay, now I can go, and now I've got to go and weigh and build in payments. So I wanted to at least get that moving. And so they were like, okay, can you explain your product? I'm like, okay, so I did that. And then the strange to me worded email that was like, it sounds like your product has human interaction, does it? And I'm like,
Okay.
of course it does. Everything. I'm like, everything requires human interaction. And they were like, okay, so we can't use it because you're not allowed to have human-based services on Paddle. There has to be automated software. Like I sell software and they use it. They meant me, not them. I read it as humans, as in my users. They mean humans, as in me. So you're not allowed to sell like a consulting service,
like a productized service, or
right,
something like that.
Yeah. So it has to be software that is like self-service, effectively, either an application or a subscription service or something. It has to be not involve me to. So I'm like, oh no, that's not, because they were like, well, in that case you can't use it. Here's a link to our service policy. And I'm like, oh, okay, no, there's no humans involved in making this service.
yeah, that makes sense. But that's a poorly worded question. Sounds like
it's one of those things. If you read their terms of, if you read the document that they sent afterwards beforehand, it makes sense because it literally uses the same words, human-led interactions or something. But when that's out of context in an email, it reads completely differently.
Yeah,
and it's like, what do you mean? Of course it uses humans.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just some bot working,
your reaction
running
was
in the background.
Your reaction was the same as mine. Of course it does, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes
that was
no
my
sense.
response.
Yeah.
When we cleared that up, they said, could you send through a video of your product being used? So I actually just sent them a link to my onboarding video that's embedded right now. And 3 days later, which was yesterday, they came back and said, great, it's fine, you can do it. You need to send just legal stuff now. So I'm like, so that's good.
Yeah, awesome. Congratulations.
People now. Thank you. So I've got no excuse not to charge people now, right? I guess.
There you go. Congrats. Yeah, you gotta put that payment page up.
Well, at least I can write it now. I can build the page. So they have a sandbox thing. So I'm gonna just play around with that. And it also means I've got to think about pricing, which I've been putting off for way too long as well. So
oh, nice. So they do have a sandbox, kind of like Stripe has a sandbox.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. Cool. So
I mean,
I chose Paddle over because I noticed Stripe now have they're launching a tax, Stripe tax and things. The biggest thing for me is the fact that I'm selling immediately off the bat to 3 countries. At least that's the beta users and hopefully people who will pay. They're already in 3 countries, and that means 3 different sets of sales tax. And the US is particular, you've then got multiple states to deal with. So I'd be looking at having to do 5 sets of tax filings, even sales tax filings, even on day 1, as long as all the beta users end up paying, right? Which is I don't want to deal with that. That's not, and I don't want to get it wrong either. So and Stripe also Stripe tax doesn't support Japan in its initial version. It will do, I'm sure. I'm sure it will. And plus, they don't file for you; they just tell you what to do. So
they don't have that component yet, but apparently they're working on it.
Yeah,
coming.
So this initial version will be you need to file this document. Click here in order to go to the thing in order to file it. So whereas Paddle is because they're the merchant of record, they effectively sell the product for you. I think same as Outsetter, right? I think.
No, I don't.
No, because that connects to Stripe, doesn't it? So,
it connects to Stripe. Yeah, they don't. It doesn't work the same way. They connect to Stripe, and I think there's a way to specify the tax that you want to collect, but you have to do it yourself.
Do it yourself. Yeah. So that was one thing that I'm just, especially since I'm dealing with Japanese tax authorities, which is not my area of expertise. I'm not messing around with that.
Yeah.
Use somebody who knows what they're doing.
Overall, how was the process of getting approved with Paddle for you?
I mean, apart from that slight misunderstanding, it was straightforward. They would just explain what it does, why you need this effectively, what does your product do, they basically just explain what your product does and how it's used. So
Mhm.
I just wrote a few paragraphs about that, sent them the video, and it's all fine.
Oh, so you recorded a video to like explaining your product. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I considered paddle way back before I decided to go without setup, but I still don't know which way I want to go. I haven't really integrated Outseta yet fully into my product. I'm only using a couple of their services, you know,
Mm.
because they cover billing,
Yeah.
payments, and you know all the others, some other stuff, and I haven't fully integrated much really. So I don't know, because I suspect I'll have a similar issue if, you know, given the nature of the product,
Mm.
people can be, you know, anywhere in the world connecting and
Yeah.
using fusioncast. So I don't know what I'm going to do about that,
Mm.
because that's a problem.
It's a concern, isn't it? I mean,
It's,
I know
yeah,
there's, I'm sure a lot of these early products don't handle tax very well or at
yeah,
all, right? It's
yeah,
kind of almost like brushed under the carpet, and I'm not going to do that.
yeah,
Out of all the decisions I'm going to make, that's not something I'm going to do, especially since, say, I'm located in somewhere that I'm not, I don't know well with regards to how these things work, so I'm not going to get that wrong.
yeah, yeah.
So one reason that Outset requires you have to use their authentication stuff, right? Or you have to link into their CRM in order to bill people, correct?
I don't think you have to use their authentication,
Okay, very good.
because I have my own authentication, and I can still, from what I understand, I can still integrate billing and payments.
Okay, right.
I still haven't done it, like I was saying, but I don't know exactly. But if I remember correctly, one of the co-founders did a demo with me way back, and I remember, I think I asked that question, you know, if I have my own authentication, can I
Mm.
still use billing and payments? And he said yes. So if I remember correctly.
Okay.
So, but again, I haven't gone full in without Seta, so I'm still thinking about it. The only thing that scared me about Paddle is some posts that I read of some horror stories of
Mm.
them dropping the product without notice
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
I've read those too, and those were my immediate like, is this good? This sounds
Yeah.
scary. But in all of those cases, there seems to be an after story as well. It's not like that was it. It's like
Hmm.
they respond to them after a few days and things get fixed, and they do seem pretty quick at responding to even the onboarding, the application emails. They seem pretty quick about responding to all those.
Hmm.
So I'm hoping that there's no problems. But yeah, that was my only hesitancy there was that this seems to be some horror stories, but there seems to be horror stories regarding every single product on the internet. So
Yeah.
I'm like, gotta take
Yeah.
everything with at least an understanding that you're only seeing one side of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're using Paddle, then does that mean you don't need to integrate with Stripe? Does it work?
Correct.
They have their own thing.
Yes,
Okay.
correct. So the other thing as well is it handles I mean, I guess like Stripe, it handles invoicing. You can have multiple price plans. It does the tax based on where the buyer is. It just handles everything for you like that.
Mhm.
The only difference is, it's not your merchant account. So things come through on the credit card with like Paddle and then your name of your company.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so
I
there
see.
is I'm used to it because I use a few services that use it. So I'm kind of used to using it as an end user, and
Hmm.
it's absolutely fine. Yeah, I mean, it seems the API is pretty straightforward, no big surprises there. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think it should be
Nice.
okay.
Nice. Maybe I'll give it a try. I don't know.
So
You-
their fees are a little bit higher than if you were just going for straight Stripe, obviously because they're offering more and they're not
Mhm.
just taking the payment. But as I said, for me, it was just this peace of mind that I know that the right sales taxes are going to get taken and paid.
Yeah.
And for me, that's just one thing I don't want to get on the wrong side of.
Yeah. And I guess it also depends on how long it takes for Stripe to catch up to that and
Mm.
offer that service, you know?
I mean, you can export from Paddle. There doesn't seem to be any limitations with you moving, exporting your customers. Obviously, I think they'd probably have to resubmit their payment information, I assume, but you're not tied into it forever. You could just keep those as old users and onboard new users into Stripe or something if you wanted to change later.
Mm.
So it's not like it's not an impossible thing to undo, but at this stage, it just seemed to be the thing which suited my need the most.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, thanks for sharing that.
I'll let you know how it goes when I've onboarded, when I've done through the sandbox stuff.
Yeah, you'll be the guinea pig.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to share?
And that's me. All done.
All right. I think that's it for me too. Should we wrap it up?
Let's wrap it up.
All right. Notes for the show. We don't have notes.
Aren't we supposed to sell a mattress or something as well?
I know, right? We'll close it off with Justin Jackson's. This podcast is hosted, not toasted, on transistor.fm.
I love because I was playing with, you submit it to everything, just going through the interface and things. It's a really well thought out product, right?
It's
very cool.
It's I love it. Love it.
I can't imagine doing it any other way. Just having seen that, it's like all the analytics, they're just submitting everything, just managing the whole process. It's like they've really done well. It's very cool. I'm really happy to see it succeeding as well.
Yeah, and it's a pretty large product because it has so many different areas. It's got analytics, the hosting side, the embeddable player, the distribution, the websites, the custom websites for your podcast that they host themselves. All these different areas. It's crazy. It's
surprising. When you start going through it, you're like, oh my god, this is like really comprehensive.
Really comprehensive. Yeah. And for a 2-people team, it's just really incredible that all they've been able to accomplish. So congrats to them and props to them for
100%.
achieving that. It's great. I love using it. I love the product.
Yeah, absolutely.
I recommend it every time I get an opportunity. Someone asks about hosting a podcast. I always recommend Transistor.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we didn't get paid to say all this, by the way. We're just big fans.
Absolutely.
Full disclosure. All right. Good. All right, Alan. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
We'll be in touch online.
Onwards and upwards.
Yeah.
Talk to you later.
All right. Take care.
Cheers,
Bye.
man.